America needs Canada in so many ways, but I'm going to address the one most crucial. And that most crucial thing is oil. Canada is the reason why the United States doesn't bow at the feet of the Middle East or OPEC and predominantly Saudi Arabia. You see, after World War II, the United States heavily relied on using Middle Eastern oil for Europe and the rest of the world to rebuild the global economy. And it was that way for several decades, up until the early 2000s, when both Canada and the United States found cheaper methods to extract their own petroleum products. One of the worst economic shocks delivered to the United States was by Saudi Arabia and the rest of OPEC in 1973 under the oil embargo, when they just stopped selling oil and they literally halted the vast majority of the Western economy. When I talk about the economic shock of that oil embargo, let me just put it into better perspective for you. I'm looking at oil prices for 1973, right before the oil embargo went in, and then we saw, once it was placed, the price of oil increased by 134% within a month, significantly more than just double. This was just the beginning of the oil embargo, mind you. At its peak, the price of oil almost quadrupled. Now, the price of gasoline didn't do that crazy high amount. It went up by maybe, at most, 50 cents. But for the first time, we started to see gasoline shortages, and gas stations just had to shut down for the day. Needless to say, this huge oil price shock led us into a recession that lasted 2 years, and it was brutal. And the United States faced another huge economic shock, but narrowly avoided a recession during the 1978 Iranian Revolution, since the world and the United States was relying on Iranian oil. And now that's a thing of the past. The United States is the world's top oil producing nation at 13.64 million barrels per day. No other country has ever reached these numbers. And Canada is the world's fourth largest oil producing nation, and they supply us with over 60% of our oil imports, while Saudi Arabia and Iraq only supply us with at most 5% of those oil imports. And no matter what you hear in the media, there's no way that the United States and Canada would ever break ties or, of course, end their energy agreement, because Canada produces heavy, sour crude for dirt cheap, and we have thousands of miles of pipelines going to the United States to buy that dirt cheap crude. And you might be asking, hey, if America produces so much of its own oil, like more than Saudi Arabia or Russia, why on earth are we importing oil from anyone, especially Canada? You see, the United States produces mostly light sweet crude, and that is ideal for jet fuel and gasoline, so we have those bases covered. But that doesn't cover all of the other industrial needs. But heavy, sour crude oil does, and that's what Canada has. And if you're curious about what heavy sour crude is good for, it's diesel, asphalt, and of course, ship fuel. It is a pretty sweet deal when your northern neighbor produces the oil that you can't but need desperately. Not only is it economically cheaper, but it is also militarily cheaper. Now, while the United States does maintain some presence in the Middle East, it is nowhere near as strong or invested as it was even 30 years ago. The United States now uses its presence in the Middle East to balance global energy prices. And that's it. They're doing it primarily for trade and, of course, politicians to want to make sure that the price of gasoline doesn't get too much more expensive at the pump so they can get reelected. Because any instability in the Middle East that's truly catastrophic means oil becomes more expensive in China, Japan, Europe, any other part of the world that really needs it. And it means that Canada and the United States, even though they could meet their own energy needs, they are going to be selling their oil for a much higher price. And even if there was some kind of huge oil supply shock, the United States wouldn't suffer anywhere near as much as the rest of the world because we have that great northern neighbor. If you're curious about this infographic, take a look. I got it from Visual Capitalist. They are a great source of infographics. I hope you found this post informative, and thanks for watching.